Hi guys, Jamie here and welcome back to Flow for Couples. Hopefully you have already instituted your daily practices, specifically the 15-minute practice as well as the nightly heart rate variability plus gratitude practice. Now those may seem underwhelming for some folks, they may seem overwhelming for others. Either way, stick with them. They do have a definite point and they kind of bookend both the sort of the sexual erotic as well as the heart and compassionate connection components. And you will remember that we referenced explicitly when we talked about the biochronology, or the sort of timing of the neurochemistry of attraction, both over the arc of our relationships as well as through the months and through the days. And we referenced these two books. So I just wanted to kind of bring them up so you have a visual on them. If you haven't yet had the chance to go out and get them, definitely worth the investment. If you just want to kind of take the Cliff's Notes version, we've already given it to you. But if you would prefer to have a little bit more of this information to consume at your own pace and in your own way, would certainly recommend reaching out or at least researching these books online and getting some of the good information therein. So today we are going to go into a bit more detail about flow itself, because some of the feedback we've received is, well, hey, I didn't actually come into this course deeply steeped in the subject. Either I came in directly from hearing about flow for couples and that sounded interesting, or potentially, and quite likely my partner said, hey, I think we should do this thing together. So we're just going to kind of slow it down and not give you guys a boilerplate rendition of flow science, flow theory, and applications. If you'd like to check that stuff out, look on flowgenomeproject.com. If you're really geeked about it and you want to take a deeper dive, we have a different program, Flow Fundamentals, for that. What we're going to do today is really just go into flow just enough to be dangerous, so you actually understand what the hell is flow for couples and what might that mean, but really explain things in terms of relationship, because it is our sincere belief that practicing with a partner is one of the strongest and most potent ways to get into flow. So let's go ahead and contextualize it in that light. So the simplest way to describe a flow state is a moment where you feel your best and you perform your best. And it often has four qualities. It has a quality of selflessness, meaning I lose that sense of my inner critic or my sort of sense of my inner narrator. It has a sense of timelessness, where regular clock time gets replaced with either sort of an extended elastic now or a super fast accelerated passage of time. It has an experience of effortlessness, and it has an experience of richness, meaning there's a lot that we see, feel, think, and perceive during those times. So if you just think of the acronym STER, S-T-E-R, that's a great way of remembering all of the components that go into the flow state itself. And the simplest way to think about it is just the moments that have been absolutely awesome in your life. Odds are pretty good that they have had some element or some components of the flow state itself included. So let's take them one at a time and just describe them again as they relate to relationship. So if you think about some of your most memorable, intimate encounters, hopefully they have included a loss of self-consciousness, a potentially even a union or merger between you and a partner. So it's that sense where I don't know or no longer care or no longer can notice where the I, that is my waking self, ends and where the you begins. E. E. Cummings, the great lowercase poet, used to wrote about that in some great ways. Martin Buber, the theologian, talked about the I thou relationship, the idea that it is you and me, and then there's something, that magical hyphen that connects us. This is what a flow state, where we lose that sense of our normal self, our normal critique and judgment, and we actually fuse or become one with what's around us. And of course, in the case of an action sports athlete, it's a mountain or a wave. In the case of flow for couples, it's your partner. And that can be a beautiful and powerful thing. And something else that it does is, not only does it give us some perspective beyond our normal waking self, it gives us some relief from our normal relationship dynamic. So if just for a moment it's not about whose socks aren't in the hamper and whose dirty dishes, are still in the sink, and it can actually just become about that I thou, the selflessness of a flow state can become a welcome and beautiful thing. The next is the timelessness. And again, we're going to unpack this in explicit detail from a very particular angle. But as many of you have probably already experienced, in moments of intense passion, the world really does seem to stop. And there can be an experience of non-ordinary time. Now that's beautiful. And that is, in fact, that's the bullseye that we're shooting for. But to get there, we actually need to figure out all the ways we're not there and where else are we in general. And so we're going to discuss that in some detail about how to spend time in the now. But for now, just know that past stories and future projections are typically the things that keep us out of that timeless moment. We have a preference for some other time or place, and we don't allow ourselves to just be deeply attuned and present. And for those of you that are at least several days in now to that 15-minute stroking practice, that is one of the core potential lessons or insights to be gained from that. So if you're wondering, oh, what the hell are we doing? Isn't this just kind of compulsive masturbation? You're sort of like, well, I mean, it could be if you just reduce it to that level, or it could be actually a very good practice in zeroing in attention to nothing but what is happening in the present moment itself. Finally, or actually not finally, but penultimately, this is the notion of effortlessness. And when we talk about flow states in other disciplines, whether it's playing music or again, action sports or being creative or computer coding or crafting or any of those kind of things, the notion of motivation is kind of interesting because the neurochemistry of a flow state is very compelling and rewarding. Now, obviously, when we're talking about intimate relationship, when we're talking about erotic energy and sexuality, yeah, no shit, right? Of course it is. And if you think about it, what better project to hitch flow hacking to than the intrinsic, deeply embedded and hard-coded impulses and prerogatives of procreation. So in this instance, you're kind of getting a twofer. Sexuality in and of itself is one of the most intrinsically driven and motivated drives we experience. And on the other hand, if you combine it with hacking flow, it is absolutely off the charts, to the point where, and we joked about this when we talked about hedonic calendaring, at first your hedonic calendaring is to make sure you do it enough, and then your hedonic calendaring will actually become to make sure you don't do it all the time, that there's actually other things to do, and maybe those dishes and those socks need to get washed. So effortlessness is another core component. And finally, the richness. And the richness is kind of the whole ball game. And I'm not sure how many folks will get to experience this in this first 21-day program, but this is the place that makes the entire practice worthwhile, which is literally, and we have to kind of, we try our level damnedest to, again, be content neutral. We talked about that in some of our introductory videos, which is we're not going to make meaning for you about the experiences you have, and where it all comes from, etc. And on the other hand, there does appear to be a state of consciousness that two people engaged sexually and erotically with open hearts and deep trust and safe practice boundaries can get to on an incredibly reliable basis that appears to have heightened levels of information, and that's information, inspiration. It's what's possible. It's what's what are you here to do and be? Where are you broken? Where there are glitches and hang-ups in your relationship? It sort of seems to be unlimited, and it appears that engaging in this practice with a partner can get you there. And the kicker is you can continue to go back to that wishing well once you learn how, provided, at least in our experience, so this is to be further ratified and validated by you guys, but at least in our experience, you can continue to level up infinitely by getting this information and inspiration, provided you do the homework that is suggested. Because again, this is sample size of 2, but it seems like when you get there, it lights you up. you have all sorts of ahas and eureka moments, and invariably it's almost like an electrician shooting electricity through a circuit to find out where the fuse is blown or where the wires crimped or frayed, and you will also get that information too. And if you use that information and inspiration to go back and mend, fix, patch, and do your push-ups, do your homework, then you get to come back stronger and you get to play at the next level up. If, on the other hand, you turn into a bliss junkie and you're like, hey, that was just so awesome, let's go dissolve into the ooey gooey again without having done our homework and without having fixed what we were shown the last time, then there's quite often hell to pay. And so that's just both a sort of heads up, this is the bullseye, this is the place that we are shooting for, not necessarily in this introductory program, but in the advanced trainings, absolutely. And know that, my goodness, it's seems to be a pretty unlimited source of feedback and next steps in life.